Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Swaim Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. It is June and we are celebrating Pride Month, and so we wanted to talk to one of the experts that is talking right now about fundraising in the nonprofit sector, specifically in LGBTQ organizations. But it's an interesting story because I feel like the LGBTQ sector is undergoing a lot of the same challenges that many of our social justice organizations are going. So hopefully in today's episode, we can learn a little bit about the landscape, what other people are experiencing, and opportunities that all of our listeners might be able to apply. So we have a special guest joining us. Denise Spivak is the CEO of CenterLink, and it is my honor to introduce her today. She at CenterLink runs a community of LGBTQ centers. CenterLink is the world's largest coalition of LGBTQ plus community centers with an active membership network of over 350 member organization. That number has grown a lot. CenterLink builds the capacity for LGBTQ plus community centers and programs to tackle the most pressing challenges facing our communities. Denise brings to her position more than 25 years of leadership and management experience in both the for-profit and nonprofit sectors. She has worked with organizations ranging from large Fortune 500 companies to associations and small local nonprofits. And we've had the pleasure of working with Denise for more than 15 years and are huge fans of CenterLink. Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, Denise. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Sam. Kristen, great to see you. And I am big fans of Swaim Strategies. So, and fun fact, I'm thrilled to be on the fundraising elevator because as a small child, my dream was to be an elevator operator as my profession when I grew up. So this is kind of making my whole professional career come full circle.
This is magic. This is magic. Oh,
this is magic. I withheld that little tidbit from you.
I love that.
I feel like you just unlocked a little corner of my heart.
I'm tucking that away. I like it.
Well, before we dive into kind of the landscape of fundraising right now, big picture, Denise, what drives you to this work? Why do you work advocating for community centers in the nonprofit space, helping them, especially now in these crazy times?
Well, you know, as you mentioned, I used to be in the for-profit sector and worked there a long time. And I happened upon this opportunity. I was volunteering, working with some small nonprofits, on boards. And I would pass by an office when I would visit the Pride Center in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which was the first Pride Center, by the way, I ever knew about. Anyway, long story short, got this opportunity, and the question during the interview was, "What do you want?" And I said, "I just don't want to feel like I want to cry every morning when I have to go to work because I hate what I'm doing. I want something like with meaning and purpose," and that's the answer, is meaning and purpose. And, you know, what Pride centers do, what community centers do, what small community-based organizations that support LGBTQ communities do is so vital, so important. And my staff and I always say, you know, if we can do one thing to help the staff, the leaders of community centers, to make their day a little bit easier, to make their job a little bit easier, then we've accomplished something important. Because what they do is so infinitely important. It is work that I could never do, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it is just everything from social service focused work, mental health care, social work, to putting on events, to creating space for people to just be, and it's nonstop work. I mean, we have centers that are doing this 7 days a week, 12, 16 hours a day. They're open. And so that's why we do the work. We do the work so that they can do the work and they can support communities. Because when we support communities, when communities can grow and thrive, we're all stronger. And so that's what drives me.
And that's why we do this work,
Yep.
is to get to work with
There
folks
you
like
go.
you. Centers during your, I have a curiosity about centers and their evolution over time in your tenure at CenterLink. I think in many ways, and you started to dive into it there a little bit, I think in many ways people think of them as physical space.
Right.
But I think what folks are taking on and what not only the climate around centers has changed, but also the work within centers has changed. So what is that for folks who may not understand some of that evolution? What does that look like from your seat at CenterLink during your
There's
tenure?
so much of what you said, Kristen. I mean, centers can range from an online space, which, by the way, when I started 15 years ago, that was not true.
Right.
But an online space. Well, I can't say it wasn't true. Some centers really were just putting up meetups, on Craigslist even or Facebook.
Yeah.
So I can't say that wasn't true. But now more so that they could be just an online meeting space, all the way up to the Los Angeles LGBT Center, which is the largest LGBTQ organization in the world, and then everything in between. When I started 15 years ago, we were a staff of 3 supporting about 160 centers, and now it's
Wow.
double that. I mean, it's about 350 plus centers, new centers starting every year. And centers are over 50 years old. They have existed for a long, long time. But I think the scope and the breadth of how they exist has evolved over the years, and so there are centers now that provide medical care. They have clinics. They provide dental care. They have buses that go around and provide care. There are centers that do pop-ups in areas that don't have any LGBTQ support. There are centers that are just starting, just like the ones that started 50 years ago, starting in somebody's garage with an idea and 3 people. So, how they've evolved, I think, is really just sort of how technology has evolved to a degree, because I think people have more resources, more knowledge about how to start an organization, how to start a nonprofit. We're here to support them in every way that we can. But I think, when people just sort of get that idea and say, well, what do centers look like? They can go on and go to our directory and find all these centers and sort of figure out what they want to model themselves after. So I just think there's been a plethora of support, knowledge, and just the drive, the ability. And when we look at the more challenges that come our way, the more that people want to find ways to support their communities, the more that they feel like there is a tremendous need. And if they've gone to an area where there is a center, they see the impact that centers have, and they want to bring that to their community. So I think it's just, I think for a lot of centers, they become so much more sophisticated. And then again, then there are the ones that are literally just starting in areas that have never had a center, never even thought of having a center. And it may be very rudimentary what they're starting with, but it is 1,000% more than what they had.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I think it's, it's just grown in so many different ways. The landscape has evolved. And so, but at its core, it's remained the same. And that is, we're supporting our communities in any ways that we can, and figuring out what the best ways to do that is.
It's interesting because I think that centers follow sort of a similar model in my mind, I guess, of a community action model, which is the community action model was developed during the war on hunger 60 years ago now, 70 years ago, maybe even, of sort of looking to how do we in our community address the specific needs of our community. And I think, like, as you're talking about, they've all started in different ways. They all begin and meet the needs of the community in different ways. So often I think it's because it is a small group of organizers in a particular community that see a need. I think of Kaleidoscope, who is specifically a youth service organization. And then I think of like the San Diego Center that is providing everything from senior housing to youth housing to clinic. There's so many different sizes and scale, but to understand that they're growing at that rate, like 350 centers that are just, I mean, there's centers that aren't members of CenterLink, right? So there's probably more than 350 centers. But 350 centers in the community, I think, speaks to growing need, that people in the community see a need, speaks to CenterLink and the ability to have like resources and shared, like we don't have to do this in a silo. We can share and learn what other people have done. But I'm curious about the sort of the fundraising landscape. How have things sort of evolved? And where do you see centers like really thriving and really struggling right now?
Yeah. Well, and I think you're parallel with the community action model. I mean, most centers that have age behind them, right, that are in that 50 year and sort of going backwards, they started during the HIV epidemic, right, the AIDS crisis. They started with HIV money. So many of our centers, even when I joined, so many centers were funded primarily with Ryan White money, with HIV money. And so it's when we start talking about now fundraising, right, and we start talking about where does the money come from, I remember there was a very pivotal person, one of CenterLink's founders, who used to go to every conference and say, if you don't start diversifying where your money's coming from, especially if all your money's coming from Ryan White money, or especially if all your money's coming from one place, you're going to have a rude awakening at some point. Welcome to the rude awakening. Right? I mean, here we are. There are some great stories, and there are also some tragic stories of how fundraising or funds that have just been consistent and just a mainstay of organizations has gone away. And that said, the thing I love about our communities, the thing I love about our centers is resilience. And so you can say you can't, but our communities have never allowed that to be the answer. They didn't allow it during COVID. We were sure, we did a feasibility study at the beginning of COVID, and it basically looked like, wow, if we can't do prides, if we can't do galas, if we can't do our fundraisers, we're going to see a lot of our organizations shut down, because what are we going to do? And they pivoted and they found new ways to find support. And in some communities, they were the only organizations doing anything. They were out there doing food deliveries and providing, STI, prevention. And they were still out there. They were finding ways to make it work. So let's go to your question about the funding landscape. And so, yes, everybody has seen lots of cutbacks, and especially with the whole anti-DEI wave with corporations, a lot of the corporate support got scaled back. With the current administration, a lot of federal money got scaled back, and that also translates down to state money, right? Because a lot of the money would come from the federal government to the states and then go to the centers for the work that they do. So lots of cuts. Tremendous amount of cuts. That said, not taking it lying down. We have centers, some of our larger centers, and when I say centers, please understand that's the blanket term, right? I mean, we have organizations, as you said, that are not centers, but they function in that role in their communities. But we have centers that filed lawsuits and saved their funding. We have organizations that lost a lot of corporate funding. went out and found other people, other corporations, other companies that were willing to not cave under pressure. And what we also found was a lot of people, a lot of individuals that are willing to step up, who want to do something and understand that that something right now is providing some sort of financial support, whether that's $5, 500, 5 million, right? Whatever you can provide. Mackenzie Scott has been a godsend to a lot of organizations in our world. And this applies big and small. I mean, you know, when she was doing the larger funding at the national level, a lot of the national organizations benefited. But when she went into doing grant funding, a lot of centers, a lot of smaller organizations were able to apply and actually get grants for $1 million. That is life-changing.
Life-changing.
Right? So what we're seeing is foundations that are stepping up, folks like Mackenzie Scott, individuals like the person down the street who didn't even think about it, but then realized, wow, this is crazy, and this organization needs my help and my support. So time, treasure, talent, whatever that might be. But I think when we look at that fundraising landscape, it is rocky as all hell right now. But we've got a scrappy group of nonprofit organizations that won't take no for an answer. And so, you know, I'm happy to say that, you know, 98% of our centers have weathered the storm well. There's about 1%. Yeah, there's about 1% that have had some challenges and are facing some roller coasters here. And then maybe 1% that have just finally said, we can't anymore, right? This is, but I will say this, and, you know, we might touch on this later on, but that's not just because of something over 2 years, right? I mean, when that happens, it's more deeply rooted. So I think that's just sort of a culmination situation. But yeah, I am so proud of where the centers, where our network has landed. Now that, you know, it's still a struggle. Every day is a struggle. You work in nonprofit, you know, it's not easy. It's still a struggle, but I do see folks, they're leaner, they're meaner. They're looking at, you know, in some cases, mergers where it makes sense. They're looking at, you know, where can they cut? Where in this ecosystem in which they live, are they duplicating services? You know, are there things that they can support others in doing, but sort of cut back what they're doing to focus on the things that nobody else is doing that they can really excel at? So, long answer to a shorter question, but that really speaks to the fact that there is no one easy answer to this fundraising landscape right now. It is so multifaceted, multi-sided, and that's what not only our centers, but I think every nonprofit now has to look at. I was at a large conference, and I mean, you've got folks like UNICEF and the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, these are mammoth organizations that are struggling, and so you know, we're not alone, absolutely, but I think there is a different target on our organizations, on LGBTQ focused organizations than perhaps on some others.
Well, I think it's interesting too, where you sit as sort of the membership organization, providing tools, resources, sounding boards. You're not alone. I'm hearing this from this other side. I know you can't hear it from the other side of the country, but I'm hearing this. They tried this. So you're able to aggregate solution and also provide resource. And I was struck in our conversation the other day about your approach to some of the basics of 501c3 governance and how attention to details can really keep organizations in some ways from being targeted, especially when you're looking at organizations that are just starting maybe in somebody's garage with folks who are passion driven but may not understand all of the let's call them rules, for lack of a better word. So what are some of the pieces you're seeing impact in helping organizations think through that might be something for our other broader nonprofit community to keep thinking about when they're looking at how to move forward?
Yeah. I mean, the core answer to that is, for God's sake, understand what a 501c3 needs to do and understand what being on a board means, right? Because it is, if we're going to be targeted, at least don't make it easy. And making it easy means not filing your taxes, not being registered in your state, there's just such core basic things that nonprofits need to do. I always we provide trainings for boards on core roles and responsibilities, and one of the first things I say is that there are two gifts that you can give to an organization. One is to be on the board, and one is to not be on the board. And the truth of the matter is, being on a board isn't for everybody, right? If you can't show up on meeting days, if you don't have the time to commit to being on the board, don't be on the board, because that's when things get missed. That's when we're not filing the registrations. That's when we're not looking at our bylaws. That's when we're not filing the taxes, that we're not paying payroll taxes. Those are the little things that we need to make sure are getting done, so that it's not easy, that our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed. If we have something that is, we're not sure about, to make sure we're consulting a nonprofit attorney, it's basic sort of little things that can turn into big things. And this happens no matter what the time, right? No matter what administration, no matter what the environment that we're living in, but it's really heightened now. And so if we make it easy for the government to pull our 501c3, well, now we can't fundraise. I mean, we can, right? But people can't take a tax deduction, so it becomes much harder. So this is why, the attacks on nonprofits in general, and the fundraising, the tax deduction laws, and those are all really important things that boards need to be looking at, and they need to be understanding. The other part of that is looking at the other side of the coin, and what happens if our board's doing their job of really doing that sort of scenario planning and looking at what happens if things don't go well, because it's too late. By the time you get to that point, right, it's too late. And that's what we see a lot of. So what we've been trying to do is really focus folks on understanding those core roles and responsibilities. We've done we've sent out at the beginning of the year like 7 checklists of, these are things you got to do every year, and this is what you should be doing every quarter, and make sure you're checking on these insurances. And because people aren't born with this knowledge, right? It's like fundraising. Most people aren't born innately with this knowledge. But that's, if you're doing your job on a board, if you're doing your job as a nonprofit leader, then you're going to find the tools that you need, and hopefully we can help provide them, of what you need to protect your organization, because that is one of your first core duties, is to protect that organization fiscally and legally.
Well, I think too, we experience that not only does the nonprofit understand that they're not out of compliance, but then when they run into the issue or the challenge, it not only is harder to fundraise, it becomes like a legal hornet's nest that they're tied up in. And while centers have the amazing fortune of having CenterLink, not every nonprofit does, and yet every nonprofit has access to the state nonprofit association, which I highly recommend. In fact, there's a group here locally in Salem, Oregon, that is starting a youth center, and I referred them to you all, but as I was talking to them, I'm like, you have to tap into our state association to understand compliance, to understand and get your questions answered about, are we doing these elements correctly so that you're not that easy target?
Yeah, because to your point, there are federal laws. There are also state laws.
Right.
Yes.
And being out of compliance with either and or both it puts you in a really bad place.
Yeah.
A really bad
A
place.
good idea quickly turns into a really big headache.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
I also want to advocate too around some of the stories I've seen coming out of the centers that we work with right now in this. I mean, it's just an unusually heightened time with like the rise of fascism and this sort of attack coming at us.
How casually that just flows from you.
It just happens. But in this moment, there has been a fear that we've heard a lot of nonprofits not want to say DEI or justice or Black Lives Matter or Trans Lives Matter or any of the things that previously were value alignment for them. The fear is preventing them from having clarity and a voice right now. And yet what I'm seeing in the centers is that centers have doubled down on mission, stayed true to the importance of this work, of justice work, of inclusive work. And what they're finding, like you said, there are other folks stepping in to fill the gaps, like a major donor. I mean, I hope every organization out there struggling gets a Mackenzie Scott gift. I hope every single one does. I repurpose those Amazon funds, yes, but in light of not all of us have access to that, I am finding that there are businesses and corporations who are being challenged by their customer base to step up and stay value aligned. And the more our donor base is shifting to younger donors, the more important it is for younger donors are demanding that their products are value aligned. So while someone may step out of the funding game, there are 100 people waiting to step into the funding game. It takes time and relationship building, and that's where your board can be such a huge benefit to you. Are the relationships that they have in their workplace, in their bigger social networks, so that it's not just incumbent on one leader or one development director. But I encourage folks who have that sense of fear to challenge their board and their executive staff to double down on mission and not double down on the fear. Because what I've seen, I mean, some of the impact with some of the centers we've been working with, when they've said, no, this is who we are and this is our mission and we are staying true to that, they've had donors step in and say, how do I fill the gap?
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
100%.
And to me, that is the most powerful manifestation of the work, right? So many centers being born of an absolute epidemic and crisis. Right. And not really having the privilege of shedding an identity to fundraise.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like, this is who we are.
Right.
This is who we're going to be, and this is who we're making space for. There is no shape shifting in that. And so finding folks that want to be a part of that, that's the work, but that's also the reward. Because when folks are in on that, let's go, you know? Yeah,
100%. And it's an unwillingness of our organizations to go back into the closet.
That's right.
You know, at the local or the national level, we worked so long to come out. You know, we don't want to go back in. That's not the direction we want to head. And again, adversity is not something new for our communities, for our centers. We faced it before. We'll probably face it again. But I think, you know, with each adversity and getting through all of them, it makes it stronger.
Yeah.
You know, it makes us stronger. It makes the movement stronger. It makes the organization stronger. And to your point, it's not unnoticed. And so we start getting those folks that believe in the mission, that believe in the purpose, that believe that that there is more good than there is bad. And also, by the way, most people love somebody who is LGBTQ plus,
Yeah.
right? I mean, whether it's a family member, a friend, whatever that may be, but it's so now it's not just a concept, right? It is somebody that we love that needs support, and these are the organizations that support them. And so there is support out there.
Yeah.
It's finding where that is, and like you said, if our organizations create those cultures of philanthropy in their DNA, if that's where they are rooted, and the money will come.
Yeah.
The money will come, but we have to create that culture, and we have to have everybody going out there and building relationships and bringing the folks in that have that connection, whatever it is, to our organization, and making them understand the importance of what we do.
Yeah.
Well, I fundamentally feel that at the core of good philanthropy is connection, joy, and relationship. And you just touched on all those
Yep.
things. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I want to talk about each of those things. So we'll be right back with Denise Spivak.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the Fundraising Elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your programming and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at swaimstrategies.com. You can also find the link in our show notes.
Welcome back. We are talking to Denise Spivak about LGBTQ plus centers, community centers, and also just the power of getting behind your mission and creating connection and building a community. As a membership organization, you facilitate resources for centers, but you also facilitate connection between those centers.
Correct.
And what do you see those connections make possible?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about mission and purpose, right? And that is our mission, is to strengthen,
Yeah.
support, and connect our organizations. It's, we can do great programming. We can do tons of things. I've always said about our annual conference, yes, we want to provide great programming, but at the end of the day, with everything that we do, the most important things, the things that everybody always comes back to as the most valuable thing that we provide, is the connection. Is that answer, if you will, to feeling alone. Being an executive director, a CEO, a board chair, it is so lonely. It's one of the loneliest positions, because there's not a lot of people that, number one, understand what you do. But number two, that you can really talk to, because there are things that you can't talk to your staff about.
Right.
You can only talk to your significant other about for a certain amount of time. And then they're like, I don't really understand it, and I'm tired of hearing about it. And then, your board, you can talk to them. Yes, but there's also, like, sometimes you just want to solve what you've got going on before you bring it to the board. So you need that connection with people that get it. And also who have either tried it, succeeded at it, failed at it, but it's that brain hive, it's that shoulder, it's that understanding, and that ability to not be alone that connection brings. And it is so important. And oh, by the way, that's what centers brings to their communities, right?
Yeah.
Centers bring that connection, that place where people can just be themselves and not feel alone. And so connection is so vital at every level. And I don't care who you are or what you do, connection, community, they are such core, intrinsic needs that we all have. Some of us more than others. Some people are more introverts, right? And they don't necessarily want constant connection. But even a lot of folks that I talk to who would classify themselves as introverts, at a certain point, they do want some sort of connection. And some sort of community. So I think that is really the core value, the core thing that we bring to our network, to our members, and what we always hear back as the number one thing that our members appreciate the most.
Well, and I feel like that sense of connection is something that extends all directions, right? Like the fact that you create connections among leadership, I hope that other leaders are finding their connections of where they belong in community and can share ideas. But then those connections of what the center does for community and bringing people together to create a sense of community, of belonging, of, having a third space, so to speak, of where they find their people. We're so social in nature that then that also yields those connections to donors, right? That
yes,
it's so interconnected. And I think that we misunderstand or don't see right now, because we're in the middle of it, that isolation is a tool for oppression, that COVID separated us, that digital spaces and technology, while sometimes can be a connecting resource, they often create isolation. And that when we invite people in and when we feel that sense of belonging, we actually can get to decision making faster, we can get to joy, and we can get to a sense of solution building together. Yeah. And so we've been talking a lot about the invite in, we're in the event space. So how do we bring people back together and invite people back in and connect people back to our mission? And intrinsic in the culture of centers is pride celebrations. Yes. And I don't know that everyone knows the origin of that, but I feel like it's important to talk about because it emphasizes this idea of connection, of belonging, but most importantly, of joy. And you mentioned being in the closet. Pride is sort of the antithesis of being in the closet is the bringing people together in joy. And we have found right now that people are craving that. They are craving community and joyful celebration that unabashedly doubles down on the things that we value and that matter to us. Justice, equity. Can you talk a little bit about just pride as a concept and how centers are so intrinsically linked to pride?
Yeah, I mean, prides are celebrations of our communities. They're celebrations of who we are. They are celebrations of joy. It's bringing out the best of who we are, the best of community, the best of just fun and celebration. And it's a time for, to a degree, I want to say it's also a time for reflection, and about the struggles that we have overcome, right? And how we're approaching the struggles that we still face. Again, so much of this was born out of so many centers were born out of the HIV crisis. Prides were born, essentially out of the Stonewall riots. And when you look at those challenges, right, they're still there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're not gone. It's not like, oh, that history. Yeah, it's history, but also, by the way, it still exists. And now, to a lot of the points that you're making, Sam, it in some cases still exists even more now.
Yeah.
And so I think that when people look at prides, and sometimes they don't fully understand, why do you have to have that? Why do you have to do a parade? Why do you have to march around? We don't have to. We want to, right? Because we feel like it's important, not only as a tool to celebrate, but also to educate, and to bring that joy to folks who are open to receiving it. Centers, there are centers that participate in prides. There are centers that run prides. A lot of our centers run prides in their communities, and where there is a pride, you will see a center one way or the other. They'll either be tabling, they'll be running it, they'll be a partner in it. Sometimes they'll be either giving out grants or receiving a grant from it. But at the end of the day, again, it's about connection. It's about bringing people together. It's about celebration, education. It's about advocacy,
Yeah.
right? It's about showing up and showing what's important about our community to those who want to be a part of it, want to support it. For a lot of folks, Pride's may be the first event they go to that's LGBTQ focused. Sometimes you just happen into it. You're walking down the street and
Yeah.
there's this big thing going on, right? And you're like, oh, what's that? For other folks, they look forward to it every year. Like this is their thing. They can't wait for the Pride Parade. They can't wait for Pride to happen. And prides, like centers, are different all across the country. I mean,
Yeah.
there are prides that are a few hundred people because it's a small community and it's the first few years that they're doing it. Then you go to like a Los Angeles, a San Diego, a New York, Tampa, Atlanta. I mean, those prides are mammoth, and they're events, they're experiences. But I think for everybody, it's and by the way, lots of allies at prides.
Absolutely.
This
Yeah.
is not right. That's a great place for allies to show up and celebrate with the community. So it's I always remember my mom talking, or my wife talking about how her mom and her daughter came to Pride with her one year, right? And that's what a special time,
Yeah.
because it's a way to show support and celebrate along with people. And I don't think we do that enough in our society.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like it's one big party. But at the core, at the root of that, it's so important to remember, though, there's a lot of struggle that led to that, right? And this is, again, we're not going back in the closet. We fought long and hard to be able to get to that point. I mean, when you look at where it came from. Those Stonewall riots were not a celebration, right? I mean, those were people fighting for their freedom, for their lives in some cases, because there were police coming in with battering rams trying to eliminate the location. And so anyway, long story short, to answer your question, I think, for centers, it's an important time. It's a time that everybody looks forward to. It's a ton of work.
It
It's a
is.
ton of work for our centers. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like the time that goes into planning prides it's an intense event. But the reward is so amazing. And so I hope everybody gets to experience a pride at some point in their lives, because it is fun.
Well, and I think the other piece to me that's so critical about prides, in the same way it's critical about centers, is it's a place for folks to go. So if I'm a queer closeted kid who has no connection, doesn't know,
Community.
doesn't like, I can go and I have an instant community by affinity.
Yeah.
And am brought into a space where who I am is center to the space. And I think that at Pride and that at centers is so fundamental, that when we talk about the challenges and funding and all of these pieces, like these places have to exist. And I feel that in the very collaborative and dedicated work that you all are doing at CenterLink for centers to exist.
Yeah.
A lot of the chatter in the world for nonprofits right now is grim. Some of it because it is grim, and some of it is because we're told it's grim.
Right.
And our job then becomes, how do we differentiate between what's real and what's being blown our way, right? How do you see your organizations meeting that current moment with all of that chatter?
Again, I'll go back to the fact that adversity is not something new. for our communities, for our centers. Sadly, right? I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't have to make that statement. But at the end of the day, I think that's true for so many nonprofits, right? So many nonprofits were born out of adverse situations.
Yep.
So, and just as a side note, I graduated from college in 1988, and I went to a nonprofit job fair. So these were the Reagan years. I went to a nonprofit job fair, and my friend and I left and looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, I'm never working in nonprofit." It was the most depressing
Yeah.
thing I had ever been to. Ralph Nader was the keynote speaker. It was, I honest. So sometimes I sit and I laugh that this is what I do for a living now.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, right, for nonprofits, adversity is where so many of us started, and it's not something that's new. So all that to say, like, I don't think that's new. Certainly it is difficult, right? It's challenging.
Yeah.
It's challenging to wake up to that every day, and that's such a big part of your day. And so um, I think where we see it a lot right now is burnout,
Yeah.
staff burnout, uh, and I think again, not unique to centers. This is a nonprofit situation, and when I talk about nonprofits, I'm talking about like hospitals too, right?
Yeah.
It's the frontline workers. It's a lot of burnout because we're talking about people who are not only trying to assist people who are going through the world right now, but they're going through the world right now too.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like this double, triple level of impact, and that leads to a lot of burnout. So I think uh, it's on top of figuring out how do we serve our communities, we really have to be even more aware of how are we supporting our staff?
Yeah.
How are we making the work environment something where we're providing support for the folks that are providing support for our clients, for our communities. And that's where I do see our organizations meeting the moment. I see nonprofits meeting the moment. We're changing the way we look at the work week. A lot of organizations are going to 4-day work weeks. Compensation levels are being reviewed at a much more frequent clip than they used to be. We're looking at what kind of support EAPs and bringing in different sorts of support mechanisms to provide that that level of relief, or I've used the word support a lot, but that's really
Yeah.
all we can do, right? To make sure that our folks are taken care of so they can keep doing their work. And so where I see our organizations meeting the moment, I mean it, and by the way, it is a constantly moving target,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just when you think, oh, okay, I'll do this, and then that'll do it, and then the next thing comes along. So but I think again, that's the resilience, right? It's not an unknown entity in our world. So but this is where the connection comes in, right? And the opportunities for our leaders to connect with each other, have that support for them to be able to vent and to share, but also to get ideas from each other and sort of, well, what are you doing? How are you supporting? And what are you hearing? And that's where I think connection again comes into play, and making sure that folks have that resource of other folks doing the job, as well as just being out there. You talked about the state nonprofit associations, the National Council of Nonprofits, and there are so many great resources that we sort of cull and try and bring the best of to our folks of what are some of the best practices in nonprofit right now, to everything from support your staff to do compensation studies, and what are some good easy things that you can do for your staff just to make them feel appreciated and better. So I think, that's where I'm seeing them meet the moment at sort of that level. And then just the advocacy, where they're stepping up in advocacy right now is just incomparable. I mean, they are, from health to, there's a lot of communities right now where folks can't get the services that they need.
Yeah.
And so really trying to work with people and providers and insurance companies. I mean, our centers are doing things that probably they never would have imagined they'd be doing.
Yeah.
To try and make sure that their communities are taken care of. And so the chatter is grim. A lot of what's going on out there is grim. But I think, I think our centers, I think nonprofits in general are really stepping up to meet the moment and make sure that nobody's left behind. I mean, this can't be where we let things slip through the cracks, right?
Yeah.
We need folks to know that they're cared about.
Yes, we do.
Well,
And that they matter.
before we take a break, I wanted to ask if you had any super stellar shining star, little glimmer of hope success stories out there that you've seen where, someone's really stepped into a place of advocacy and found a really positive result.
Well, I not surprisingly, I can talk about this from a number of different angles. One place, though, as this is the fundraising elevator, I do want to talk about collaborative funding, and I want to talk about funders who have stepped up and understood that they can have great impact and they can have greater impact through collaborative funding. And I every chance I get to preach about this, I will preach about it. But to be able to make your money go further, to support more organizations, and we have done this with a number of. We have one funder that we've done this with for probably going close now to 20 years, and they were one of our earliest funders, but also one of our longest term funders. But it's about providing funding. So collaborative funding is really where re-granting comes in. So they give us a chunk of money that we then re-grant out to a number of different organizations, so that instead of it going to one place, now we have a chunk of money that is being distributed to 20 different places. We've done this with Procter and Gamble. We've done this with so many different foundations. It's where it's where differences are made. And when that money is for general operating, can I just tell you what a game changer that is? It's money that does not come easily. So that's where I've seen when we're going that way, right? If we're going from the funder to the center, that's where I see glimmers of hope, and I see more and more folks at the corporate level, at the foundation level, understanding that. And I think, the Gates Foundation has done a great job. They do a collaborative funding, and this is also in conjunction with Lever for Change and, the Mackenzie Scott folks. They have a collaborative funding conference that they do every 2 years to bring folks together, funders and the re-granters, so that they can understand what's working and how to make that whole process better. So
Brilliant.
That's where I've seen great success. I've seen glimmers of hope for centers, for the nonprofit sector. When I look at our centers, again, it's the resilience, it's the pivoting, it's saying, oh my gosh, we're going to lose these sources of funding. Where can we go? And having literally sitting down with staff and board and having brain dumps, talk about everybody talk about anybody we've ever worked with, and they sit in a room and they brain dump until they can figure out like, what's the path? What's the next path forward? And that's, I can't even give you one because I'm seeing it day after day after day at every center. And it's the fact that, I'll go back, 98% of our centers are still here and they're still moving forward. I think that speaks to it. So
That's fantastic.
Well, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the big names stepping up to support you all. So we'll be right back.
Change. It doesn't happen on its own. It happens on purpose. Thanks to nonprofits that believe a brighter future is not just possible, but needed and deserved. And that connect people to causes and turn moments of generosity into movements. That's why Bloomerang is built for purpose. To raise the bar on what's possible and help every act of giving lead to more. Because when the bottom line is a better world, no goal is too lofty. Bloomerang, built for purpose.
Welcome back. We are here with Denise Spivak of CenterLink, and we are going to get into the fundraising elevator. Denise, what would be that parting word of wisdom you would have for our nonprofit superheroes out there so that they can continue heading up?
And I already said, I hope the doors close slowly. Live your purpose, understand what it is you're set on this earth to do as an organization, and understand your place in your ecosystem, and how that all works together, and diversify. For God's sake, diversify your funding. Make sure that you're not relying on one funding stream, please, dear Lord, and get with the folks at Swaim Strategies. And I'm not just trying to be like a kiss up or anything, but the truth of the matter is, I've learned a ton from you all. I think you bring a really important perspective. But keep learning, like seek out the experts, learn from them, because it makes a difference.
Well, thank you for that.
That's very
we
sweet.
have been honored to be able to collaborate with a lot of your centers. And now I'm going to go do all the research I can into collaborative funding because we need to advocate more for that.
Oh, call me.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. You mentioned Procter & Gamble. And I
Yes.
want to talk about the fact that they are part of a campaign that has launched, because you've got some big names showing up for you all. So in partnership with Procter & Gamble, Brandy Carlisle, who we are a big fan of, just launched a fundraising effort for CenterLink. And you have the Elton John Foundation support. Can you talk a little bit about if people want to support centers, how can they show up and support the work, even if they aren't Brandy Carlisle or Elton John?
Well, let me answer that question, and then I'm going to plug the Elton John Impact
Great.
Awards. Centers need you. That's what I'll say to people. Centers, time, treasure, talent, whatever you can offer centers, because they're there to offer you what you need: support, community, a place to be. So if you have time to volunteer, if you have $5 a month to give, if you have some sort of skills that you can bring, your centers will appreciate you tremendously. And you can find your closest center by going to lgbtcenters.org and looking at our community center directory. Brandy Carlisle, love her. Oh my gosh. But Procter & Gamble, in 2020, Procter & Gamble started Can't Cancel Pride. And they've done this in conjunction with iHeartMedia. And they have done that. They did that for about 4 years because that was during COVID and prides were being canceled, as I mentioned. And so they said, what can we do? Because you can't cancel Pride, and boom, there you go.
Yep.
That was born, right? Well, now we're past COVID, thankfully, so to speak. So they've partnered now with Elton John and David Furnish and Brandy Carlisle and the Looking Out Foundation, and they've sort of built this brand new effort called the Elton John Impact Awards. And this year, they're honoring Jonathan Bailey, Laverne Cox, Melissa Etheridge, Billie Jean King, Orville Peck, and Chapel Roan.
Wow.
You say that all so casually.
Oh, wow.
Right? I mean, it's an amazing slate of folks. And you can catch this. It's on June 1st. You can catch it on any of the iHeartMedia outlets. And Brandy Carlisle and the Looking Out Foundation have have joined forces with Procter & Gamble to benefit through grants the group of us that includes the Elton John Foundation, of course, which I'm so grateful to them for funding so many of our centers for the HIV work that they do. But they benefit CenterLink, GLAAD, Outright International, the National Black Justice Collective, SAGE, and the Trevor Project. And I cannot tell you how honored we are and how appreciative we are that Procter & Gamble has been our partner with iHeartMedia since 2020. I mean, they've just been amazing partners and amazing supporters of the LGBTQ community. And we're excited about this next iteration, and we hope that everybody tunes in. It's going to be a great, great show.
Excellent.
Well, we are going to provide links. We're going to provide connections to your local centers. So if you want to get involved, you can get involved. And I hope everyone has an amazing Pride Month. Thank you for joining us, Denise. We appreciate you being a part of the Fundraising Elevator. And now we know who our official elevator operator will and for always be.
It's true. Done and done.
Oh. Finally. Thank you both so much for having me here and making my dreams come true.
I love that.
This has been a ton of fun. I always have fun when I'm with you all, and this has not been any different, and I so appreciate it and appreciate the podcast that you do and the training that you provide. It's so important. This is one of the key areas that people always bring up as a challenge in nonprofits is fundraising, right? And I think you all do a tremendous service in helping nonprofits to raise money. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.